How an inconspicuous airbase became a symbol of a government conspiracy. At the time of writing, the Facebook group dedicated to the breakthrough into Area 51 has approximately 1.9 million members. It seems the joke has gone too far. For the organizers, this whole undertaking is primarily a source of choice memes, but among the hundreds of thousands of consumers of these memes, there are surely those who seriously want to get into the mysterious military base. What do they expect to find there? One of the many secrets that popular rumor has ascribed to Area 51 for half a century, making it a stumbling block for ufologists and urban legends. We explain how the myth of Area 51 emerged and what really happens there. Although Area 51 was established in 1955, its mythical history begins 8 years earlier, in 1947, when a strange aircraft crashed near the town of Roswell, New Mexico. This accident might not have had much of an impact if not for the prevailing circumstances. That same year, businessman Kenneth Arnold spotted a group of flying saucers from his plane, sparking a media frenzy of interest in unidentified flying objects, and, strictly speaking, thus giving birth to ufology itself. Back then, the pattern was unknown. A high-profile UFO sighting is almost always followed by a flurry of confessions from new witnesses. UFOs were readily spotted in the glare of headlights on low clouds, on a flying plane, or even in moonlight. We also owe Arnold the familiar name for UFOs, flying saucers. The object that crashed near Roswell was a real boon for alien hunters in this regard. It was unlike anything known to the general public, was composed of strange materials, and, naturally, was immediately confiscated by the U.S. Air Force. According to their official version, a probe from Project Mogul crashed in the area, an ambitious program that involved launching special balloons with microphones to great heights to monitor nuclear tests in the USSR. The project was abandoned in favor of seismological observations, although the probes performed well. Well, except for one, which crashed near the Foster Place Ranch, and the wreckage of which was found by the ranch's owner. For some reason, reporters were still allowed to take a few photos of the remains of the device. But no one talked about the Mogul in 1947 because the project was classified. The Air Force couldn't fabricate a sensible explanation. Few took the standard lie about a weather balloon seriously, especially given the confessions of local residents who regularly saw real weather balloons. The final and most important contribution to the myth was made by the military itself, when they expended disproportionate effort to cover up the incident, confusing explanations, interrupting radio transmissions, detaining witnesses. The fiercely enforced secrecy hinted that it wasn't a probe at all, but something far more important. For example, an alien spacecraft. The birth of a myth. Since then, the U.S. Army, especially the Air Force, has regularly been accused of covering up such incidents. When Area 51 was established in Nevada in 1955, it became the perfect repository for all government secrets. Satellite images of Area 51 have been around for a long time. But why Area 51? In a country gripped by red paranoia, there were many secret facilities. The fact is that strange things were regularly observed near Area 51. Aircraft with incomprehensible aerodynamics, lights in the sky in the dark, deserted night. And sometimes, all sorts of strange machines crashed into the ground nearby and were immediately taken away. You can invent anything you want on this fertile soil. But taking photographs from the ground is much more difficult. Although the Roswell incident occurred in 1947, widespread interest in UFOs arose much later for a number of reasons. One of them is the same red paranoia, which attributes any anomaly to communist machinations. It took time for the idea of alien visitations to catch on. The golden age of science fiction had arrived, and people became accustomed to the idea that we are not alone in the universe. The space race had begun. The first man flew into orbit in 1961, and astronauts set foot on the moon in 1969. It seemed like science fiction was coming to life. The final impetus for the rise of ufology was the Freedom of Information Act of 1966, which allowed U.S. government agencies to declassify data. One such document was the Project Blue Book Archive, the U.S. Air Force's attempt to systematize UFO reports and understand the nature of the phenomenon. From 1952 to 1970, military analysts studied over 12,000 reports and concluded that the vast majority were the result of mass hysteria, fabrications, mental disorders, and misinterpretations of ordinary flying objects. The same UFO sighting could be described completely differently by different witnesses. The project was shut down, but that didn't stop the enthusiasts. They were shocked by the very fact that the government was taking the UFO problem seriously, but the skeptical conclusions of the ufologists only angered them. What if the conclusions were false? What if the authorities were deliberately covering their tracks? Where did they put the evidence, the alien ships and even the little green men themselves? To Area 51, of course. UFOs are constantly seen near it, it's not on any maps, the military doesn't allow anyone there, and denies the base's very existence. Furthermore, in the published Blue Book, many UFO reports are localized specifically to the vicinity of the non-existent military base. At first, the myth of Hangar 18 wasn't connected to Area 51, but it later became part of the legend. Hangar 18, the largest building at the base and large enough to accommodate a spacecraft, was of particular interest. Many conspiracy theorists focused on it, and in 1980, a science fiction film of the same name was even released, depicting Hangar 18 as a storage and study facility for extraterrestrial spacecraft. By that time, the words of retired military personnel who had served at Area 51 were becoming increasingly common. Being of advanced age, they no longer feared sanctions for breaching secrecy, but they craved public attention, especially after decades of silence, when you couldn't even tell your best friends about your work. Besides, the Cold War had seemingly ended, meaning secrets were no longer worth taking to the grave. However, the most famous revelation belonged not to an aging test pilot, but to a middle-aged scientist named Robert Lazar. In 1989, he caused quite a stir with an appearance on the Las Vegas television station Class TV. Lazar revealed that the research firm EG&G had hired him and sent him to the S4 complex located beneath Area 51. Robert Lazar claimed to have reverse-engineered alien instruments and aircraft within the complex, intending to later use the achievements of extraterrestrial designers in technology production. He allegedly personally witnessed at least 9 flying saucers, whose fuel turned out to be element 115 of the periodic table, which cannot be synthesized on Earth but can be obtained from captured alien ships. By that time, the United States had already extracted 500 pounds of the substance. Robert Lazar also described the aliens themselves. They have large heads and gray, hairless skin, large almond-shaped eyes, are no more than 1 meter 20 centimeters tall, and weigh between 11 and 23 kilograms. The aliens have been studying Earth for at least 10,000 years, and for the past 15 years, have been working closely with the U.S. Air Force. The collaboration ended after a conflict with base personnel, which resulted in the deaths of 44 people, and the aliens left our planet. There had been talk of stereotypical gray humanoids before Lazar, but it was Robert who brought them worldwide fame. Lazar's story sounded dubious from the start. Take the alien fuel, for example. Element 115 is one of the heaviest transuranic elements, which decays shortly after synthesis. Of course, by 1989, physicists had not yet synthesized the substance Lazar described, and meitnerium, element 109, half-life 4.5 seconds, was considered the last element at that time. No metal heavier than mendelevium, element 101, 51.5 days, could serve as fuel, because it decayed either in a matter of days, like dubnium, element 105, 28 hours, or in minutes, like borium, element 107, 1 minute. Incidentally, element 115 was finally discovered in 2003. Ironically, it originated not from another planet, but from Russia, which was once credited with UFO sightings. 3 years ago, it was given the name Moscovium. Its half-life is 650 milliseconds. Einsteinium, number 99, is the heaviest element that has existed long enough and been synthesized in sufficient quantities to be photographed. The alien's appearance also raised doubts, as it perfectly matched the stereotypical image of the little green man popularized back in the 1960s after the Hill couple's abduction. And when someone looked into Robert Lazar's biography, the skeptics no longer needed proof. he himself claimed to have received a degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he studied physics, and a degree from the California Institute of Technology, where he studied electronics. However, there are no records of this at either university. Lazar himself attributed it to government machinations. The irony is that Lazar's speech nevertheless gained popularity. It seems rumors surrounding Area 51 had so harassed Americans that they readily accepted even such dubious confirmation. Robert Lazar turned Area 51 into a meme, and one of the most enduring in Western culture.